brain. The brain's neural and cell membranes contain 50% omega-3 fats. They not only make up the fat membranes, but they regulate a large number of genes, control hormone receptors, and control ion channels, which is nerve communication. So guess what? Fish oil is very important. So here's omega-3 fats. It decreases chronic inflammation that's been linked to depression. It activates active cytokines cause release of toxic chemicals and alter neurotransmitters like serotonin. So there's reasons why people's serotonin get low, other than you were just born that way. You know, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for all these other hints of what you might need to do. Other nutrients for the brain. CoQ10 helps protect the brain from damage. Acetyl L-carnitine guides fatty acids into the nerve cell and aids in the formation of neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is the one you need for memory. Alpha-lipoic acid is a powerful antioxidant that alters gene expression, removes heavy metals, and slows age-related decline. Protects the brain from chemicals. Pesticides, herbicides. See, pesticides and herbicides are fat soluble. So in your body, guess where they go? Your fat in your brain. Your brain is surrounded by fat. So unfortunately, those chemicals very easily get in there. And the magnesium, by the way, I was just getting to that. Minerals, manganese, selenium, zinc, copper, all involved in the formation of antioxidant enzymes that prevent damage, and that's true. And also just taking magnesium helps protect the brain greatly. And plus it's a smooth muscle relaxant, so it calms people down in general. So there's things we can do nutritionally that make a difference and make this work better. The your brain's this electrical thing. So electricity in the body is actually through minerals. It's your minerals on a fat membrane. So we fix your fat, we fix your minerals. And we try to get rid of things that bother the brain. So B vitamins are important because they help all the things that make your neurotransmitters and help break down your neurotransmitters. Here's some thiamine is an amino acid, and riboflavin are involved in energy production. Folic acid, B12, B6, and niacinamide help DNA repair. And vitamin C, you need to protect brain cells from damage. So I got this off of a slide from I went to a lecture on insulin and obesity, and it's fascinating to me. Junk food has actually got the right kind of chemicals in it to make you become addicted to it. And they gave rats, they put them in a maze, and at the end of the maze they got junk food. Well, they let them taste it first, and then when they put them in the maze, they would get a shock every time they ate the junk food. They didn't care. They kept coming. That's how addictive junk food is. It's highly addictive, and I guess I brought that up because your diet does matter for your brain. And it doesn't help things to keep going to McDonald's, because that's going to not only give you bad fats and rob you of minerals, but it's they put things in there they don't have to tell you that are very much affect your brain and get you into addictive patterns. Why do you think our society is so flippin' fat compared to what we were 20 years ago? I can tell you what they've done to our food. And we have a 60 Minutes thing on that. And, we have it in our food lecture, but it's not our imagination, and it does bother our brain and put us into addictive patterns. Neuroscientists, chemically altered junk food triggers addiction, is what I just said. Here's an article about it. Overconsumption of palatable food. So like MSG is a taste enhancer. We have 44 times the MSG in our diet now than we did post-World War II when we first picked it up from the Japanese. And, I just found out, Crest toothpaste has aspartame in it. Did you guys know that? The FDA does not make them tell you that that's in stuff. I just found out that this weekend. And that's quite annoying to me. You need to kick our government out and start all over. You guys are missing the vice presidential debate. Jeez, there's DVR in it.
Yeah.
What happened with the toothpaste?
In Crest toothpaste, there's aspartame. NutraSweet.
Okay.
So our brains are very affected by our diet, and sugar is a drug. And she wrote a book, Molecules of Emotion, Candace Perks, PhD. There's a link between your emotions and your sugar addiction, and any addiction. People start to smoke or drink or eat sugar to deal with life. And so when we tell people to just lose weight or quit smoking, it's not easy because that cigarette, for instance, has been your friend your whole life. That cigarette was there every time you got mad, every time you got sad, every time anything happened to you, you'd light up, that cigarette's always been there for you. So not only is it a physical addiction, it's a psychological addiction, and it helps suppress your emotions. So in your anger, it just calms you down and helps you stuff it. So when part of the reason people have trouble losing weight is because then all these emotions kind of start coming out that they don't want to feel. And there's a whole thing that changes in us. There's a lot more about emotion that we're not taught. It gets stored in our body if you don't express it. Okay, so we all know that there's a DNA map for our physical body, but you know there's also a DNA map for our emotions. It turns out that the mental and emotional environment affects our epigenetics. Does everybody know what epigenetics are? So it's a new, when Watson and Crick discovered our DNA map, we thought we were going to solve everything. And it turns out that these scientists, there were several different ones working on it, when they discovered all of our DNA, they way overestimated how many genes that we had. They ended early because we had way less genes than they thought, and which is interesting. But so we started, and we realized that knowing the gene sequence didn't fix things because there's a sleeve over our DNA that determines. So if my arm's the DNA, epigenetics is a sleeve. And if there's a hole in that sleeve, then the body reads that DNA. So if there's no hole there, the DNA doesn't get expressed. So like you can have identical twins where this part is exactly the same. That's what identical twins mean. Their DNA is exactly the same. But if they were exposed to different things, you can actually look at their epigenetics and they look totally different. If they, even in the same household, they're still exposed to things differently. In utero, one baby before the other changes the expression. Male versus female, everything in that environment affects them. So epigenetics is the study of how the environment affects our genes. And that is what you're going to hear more and more and more and more about. And if you wanted to, if you YouTube epigenetics, there's a History Channel thing on it. If you want to understand it more, it's pretty interesting. Post-traumatic stress was handed down to grandchildren of victims of the Holocaust who had never met their grandparents. And they had post-traumatic stress and no other reason for it except it was on their epigenetics. It's cool. That History Tube, there's 3 things on there that's very cool to explain epigenetics. And so we tell people about that because it's kind of fun to listen to. And we're almost done. I just like to bring this up because this was in one of my lectures too, and it's something I don't talk about much, but you literally, and I'm thinking about this when I hear people complain about certain areas of the body, is there's emotions that go in certain areas. And in Chinese medicine, they never separated it. Like we are whole human beings. We aren't just this body that's a mechanical machine, and then we have a brain that's your intellect. They have associated organs with emotions, with actually seasons. And it makes sense. And I just have studied this a lot, and this is kind of typical. If you ache here or back here, it's a heart or lung issue. And fear and worry is here. You almost always have complaints here. And neck and shoulder problems are suppressed anger and stress. It can be resentment. But just to know that your body is amazing. And if you don't, we are all taught to not feel emotion. It's part of how we are brought up in our society. Like, the only emotion that's okay is happiness. Any other emotion really isn't condoned by our society. Now, men, you guys can get angry. That's normal. You're supposed to go out in the football field and punch each other out. And that's okay. And women, we're allowed to cry because we're the weaker sex, which right now I'm here to tell you, crying does not mean you're weak. It's just a different, so we don't tend to have suppressed sadness because we tend to cry more easily, although we have had to learn to shut it off to go out in the work world, and deal with things. We shut it down. But look, what I always tell people is think about 3-year-old. A 3-year-old doesn't shut anything down. They when they're mad, they have a temper tantrum. When they're sad, they cry. And guess what? They get over it in like 2 minutes. We suppress it, and we suppress it, and we suppress it. So now when somebody makes us mad, we are mad for 2 weeks or 2 years. And we'll keep coming back to that. Yeah! And it's like, So we don't get taught what to do with our emotions. And so part of what Scott likes to do is kind of get to that root cause and teach us how to be in touch with that. Because if you're what I call authentic, which means right now, how do you feel? And what's hard for me as I was trying to learn this in my life is the anger piece. Like, I figured out I didn't get mad for about 3 days. You know, I was never in the moment when somebody came after me that had good remarks to come back at them. Like, oh, why didn't I say that? Because I go into shock because I am so suppressed on my anger. I don't even know. Now, that isn't true now, but for most of my life, I didn't know I was mad. I mean, I'm not mad. And I honestly did not think I was. And I had to find out that I really was, and I still have more I need to let go of. But men kind of do that more with sadness. Like, they can get mad, but you guys have it worse than us, because it's all right for a woman to get mad now and then, although she's a B if she does. Whereas a guy's just, that's all right. It's macho to get mad. Nothing wrong with him. We're the crazy ones if we get mad. But you cannot cry. You are not supposed to cry, ever, because it means you're a weak man. And that is not okay, because we're making our little boys sick, and our men are getting sick as they're getting older. And what I like is what I've seen in the last year is we have a congressman who is crying, we have coaches that are crying, we have players that are crying. We're starting to see men start to cry, and that is healthy. Because if people don't, and they hold in their anger or sadness here, what do you think causes heart attacks? That's where it really comes from. It's not flippant cholesterol. It's because you have suppressed anger and sadness and resentment, and that goes on for years and years and years, and then you constantly have those stress hormones, which changes all your metabolism, your blood sugar, your cholesterol, and makes you inflamed like crazy. And that's why you get heart problems. That's why it'll show up in different parts of the body, is because it's where you've stuck it. And the Chinese figured that out a long time ago. We just, we're a little slow over here. But we're starting to catch on. So, alternatives, we're combining the latest technology with the added component of exquisite human compassion to provide an optimal environment that's patient-directed and professionally supported. So now I'm going to